This is a dramatized story inspired by real debt situations. For educational and entertainment purposes only. Not legal or financial advice.
$81,000. That was the number staring back at me from a spreadsheet at 2 a.m. I was 43 years old, and my restaurant, the one I'd poured every dollar and every dream into, was 3 weeks from closing forever. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there in the dark kitchen, the hum of the walk-in freezer, the only sound, thinking about how 4 years ago this place was supposed to save us. Instead, it nearly destroyed everything. My name is Marcus. I was a line cook for 15 years before I decided to go out on my own. My wife, Dana, believed in me. My parents lent me $18,000 from their retirement savings. I took out a small business administration loan for $55,000. I maxed 2 credit cards just on equipment deposits and the first month's operating costs. And then I opened the doors of Copperline Kitchen in a mid-sized suburb of Columbus, Ohio. And for about 14 months, it actually worked. Then it didn't. Let me walk you through exactly what happened. Because if you're watching this and you're a small business owner, a side hustler, someone who took a risk on yourself, this story is for you. And some of what I learned the hard way might save you. When I opened Copperline in March 2019, I thought I had done everything right. I had a business plan. I had a location with decent foot traffic near a new development. I had a loyal crew of 5. The SBA loan covered my leasehold improvements and most of my kitchen equipment. The 2 credit cards, a Chase Inc. business card with a $12,000 limit, and a Capital One Spark with a $9,000 limit were supposed to be for emergencies only. By month 6, both were maxed. Restaurants are brutal. Everyone knows it intellectually, but you don't feel it until you're watching your food cost percentage creep from 28% to 36% because your produce vendor raised prices, your HVAC breaks in August and costs $4,200 you don't have, and your best cook quits for a hotel job with benefits you can't offer. I handled it the way a lot of small business owners handle it. I ignored the credit card balances and told myself I'd pay them down when the summer rush came. Summer came. It helped, but not enough. Then in January 2020, my landlord raised my rent by $800 a month, $9,600 more per year, citing the new development nearby. And then March 2020 arrived. You know what happened in March 2020? COVID shutdowns. I went from 60-seat dine-in service to 0 overnight. I pivoted to takeout, applied for every PPP loan and emergency grant I could find. I got one PPP disbursement of $14,200. It bought me about 7 weeks. Then it was gone. By the time indoor dining came back in a limited way, I had added $19,000 to my debt load trying to survive. A merchant cash advance, which I will talk about in a minute because it was the single worst financial decision I ever made, accounted for $11,000 of that. My SBA loan, which had a 6-month deferral, resumed. My credit cards, which I had been paying minimum payments on, were sitting at $21,000 combined. I owed my parents $18,000, which wasn't on any ledger but never left my mind. And I had fallen 3 months behind on my restaurant equipment leases, adding another $6,800 in late fees and back payments. Total debt, when I finally added it all up that night in the dark kitchen, $81,400. My monthly debt obligations alone, the SBA loan payment, the merchant cash advance weekly auto draft, the credit card minimums, the equipment lease, came to $4,100 a month. My restaurant, on a good month, was netting maybe $2,800 after payroll and food costs. I was losing $1,300 a month just by staying open. And I hadn't told Dana any of it. Not the full picture. She knew things were tight. She didn't know we were drowning. I want to stop here and just say, hiding it made everything worse. I know that now. At the time, I told myself I was protecting her. She was working as a dental hygienist, pulling extra Saturday shifts to help cover our mortgage. We had a 9-year-old daughter, Zoe. I was so ashamed that I had taken my parents' money, Dana's faith, years of our life, and turned it into a crater. So I kept smiling at dinner. I kept saying, "We're getting there." I kept opening the restaurant every morning at 10 a.m. like I wasn't already dead inside. The collection calls started in February 2021. Chase had sent my account to a third-party collection agency after I missed 3 payments. I'd get calls at 7 a.m., during the lunch rush, at 9 p.m., when Zoe was doing homework at the kitchen table. I started letting everything go to voicemail. I had a drawer, I'm not proud of this, a kitchen drawer at home where I just threw the envelopes without opening them. Dana thought it was junk mail. It was not junk mail. I started having panic attacks, real ones, where my chest would tighten and I'd have to go stand outside behind the restaurant for 10 minutes just to breathe. My sous chef, a 27-year-old named Priya, asked me one afternoon if I was okay. I told her it was the summer heat. She looked at me the way people look at someone when they know the person is lying, but they're too kind to say so. I made a lot of wrong moves in this period. Let me be honest about them because I don't want you to repeat them. The merchant cash advance. When I was desperate for cash in May 2020, a company reached out to me. I'd seen their ad online, promising fast business funding with no credit check. They advanced me $11,000, and in exchange, they auto-drafted 18% of my daily credit card sales until I had repaid $1,400. That's an effective APR that would make your head spin. Some estimates put MCAs at 40% to 350% annualized, depending on how fast sales move. Mine was on the brutal end. Every day, a chunk of my card sales disappeared before I even saw them. It felt like trying to fill a bathtub with the drain open, the balance transfer trap. I got an offer in the mail for a new card with 0% APR for 15 months. I transferred $8,000 of credit card debt to it, thinking I'd pay it down in the promotional window. I made the minimum payment for 4 months and then forgot about it. When the 15 months ended, the rate jumped to 24. 99%. I had paid down almost nothing because I'd been throwing every extra dollar at keeping the restaurant alive. I'd only made my situation worse on paper. Rating my SEP IRA. I had about $14,000 in a self-employed retirement account I'd built up in my cooking years. I withdrew $9,000 to cover payroll during a bad stretch in fall 2020. Between the 10% early withdrawal penalty and the income tax on the distribution, I ended up netting maybe $6,800 of real money. I paid nearly $2,200 to the IRS for the privilege of using my own savings. I still cringe thinking about it and ignoring the IRS entirely. When 2020 tax season came, I didn't file on time. I had no money to pay what I owed, and I was too overwhelmed to deal with it. By the time I got a notice from the IRS saying I owed $7,200 in back taxes plus penalties and interest, that number had grown to just over $8,400. IRS debt does not go away. It follows you, and it compounds. The night everything broke open with Dana was a Thursday in March 2021. She had come home from work and found a certified letter from the SBA on the counter. I'd missed opening it for 2 weeks. She opened it. It was a formal notice of default and demand for payment. She stood in our kitchen holding that letter and looked at me for a long time. "How bad is it?" I sat down. I told her everything, the $81,000, the drawer full of unopened mail, the merchant cash advance, the missed tax filing, the credit cards, my parents' money, all of it. She didn't yell. She cried. Then she said, "We have to fix this, together, but you have to stop hiding it from me." That was the night things started to actually change. The next morning, Dana called in to her Saturday shift and said she needed the day. We sat down together and opened every envelope in that drawer. We made a spreadsheet. We put every debt on paper with the balance, the interest rate, and the minimum payment. Seeing it all in one place was terrifying and, in a strange way, a relief. It had a shape now. It wasn't just a formless cloud of dread. It was a list, and lists can be worked. Dana found a nonprofit credit counseling agency through the NFCC, the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. They offered a free consultation. We booked it for the following Tuesday. The counselor's name was Renata. She was calm and unhurried, and she did not make us feel like criminals. She looked at our full picture. The personal debt, the business debt, the IRS obligation. And she said something I needed to hear. You're in a serious situation, but you're not out of options. Let's talk through what each path actually looks like. I want to share what we learned because I think a lot of people in debt spirals, especially business owners, have no idea these options exist or what they actually mean. Renata walked us through the difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Chapter 7 is what most people picture when they hear the word bankruptcy. It's a liquidation. A bankruptcy attorney files on your behalf. Most unsecured debts, like credit card balances, are discharged, meaning legally eliminated, and the process typically takes 3 to 6 months. There's an income means test to qualify. The impact on your FICO score is significant. A Chapter 7 filing stays on your credit report for 10 years. But for people who are genuinely insolvent with no realistic path to repayment, it can be a legal, legitimate, fresh start. Chapter 13 is different. It's a reorganization. You keep your assets, but you enter a court-approved repayment plan, usually 3 to 5 years, where you pay back a portion of what you owe based on your disposable income. For small business owners who want to protect certain assets, who have a mortgage they want to keep current, or who have non-dischargeable debts like certain taxes, Chapter 13 can be the better structure. The filing stays on your credit report for 7 years. Renata also explained debt consolidation, rolling multiple debts into one loan, ideally at a lower interest rate. This can work if your credit score is still in reasonable shape and you have income to service a new loan. For us, at that moment, our FICO score had dropped to 538. We weren't getting a favorable consolidation loan anywhere. Debt settlement was on the table, too. A debt settlement company negotiates with your creditors to accept less than the full balance, sometimes 40% to 60% of what you owe. The catch: you typically stop paying creditors while funds accumulate in an escrow account, which tanks your credit score further, and any forgiven debt may be treated as taxable income by the IRS. Debt settlement can also expose you to continued collection action during the negotiation period. Renata was honest. For some people it works, but the risks are real, and you should consult a licensed bankruptcy attorney before going that route. Credit counseling through a nonprofit agency offered a third path, a debt management plan, or DMP. The agency negotiates lower interest rates with your creditors, and you make one consolidated monthly payment to the agency, which distributes it. It doesn't reduce principal the way settlement does, but it stops the interest spiral and the collection calls, and it doesn't carry the same credit score damage as bankruptcy or settlement. DMPs typically run 3 to 5 years. For our situation, the mix of SBA loan, credit card debt, IRS back taxes, and a business that was no longer viable, Renata said we needed to speak with a bankruptcy attorney. She gave us a referral. The attorney's name was James O'Corey. He charged $250 for the initial consultation, which felt like a lot when we had nothing, but it was worth every dollar. He reviewed our full picture and told us that given the business debt, the IRS obligation, and our current income, Dana's hygienist salary plus whatever I'd be earning once I closed the restaurant, we likely qualified for Chapter 7 on the personal side. The SBA loan and the business entity debt would be addressed through the business dissolution. The IRS back taxes were trickier. Most income tax debt can't be discharged in bankruptcy unless it meets specific age and filing conditions, but our $8,400 IRS balance met some of those criteria, and he was going to analyze it carefully. He told us something I want to pass on directly. Bankruptcy is not a character judgment. It is a legal tool that Congress created specifically for situations like yours. You are not the first, and you will not be the last. I closed Copperline Kitchen on April 30th, 2021. I turned the key for the last time, stood in the empty dining room for about 5 minutes, and walked out. I'm not going to lie to you and say it didn't hurt. It hurt more than almost anything I've ever done. That restaurant was 4 years of my life, my parents' trust, a version of myself I had believed in completely. But I also felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. I felt like I could breathe. We filed Chapter 7 in June 2021. The process took about 4 months. By October, the credit card debt, $21,000 across 3 cards, was discharged. The merchant cash advance balance that had still been following me was discharged. The remaining personal guarantee on certain business debts was discharged. The IRS situation required a separate negotiation. Our attorney helped us file an installment agreement for the portion that wasn't dischargeable, bringing our monthly IRS payment to a manageable $180. I want to be clear. None of this is a guarantee. Every situation is different. Your debt composition, your income, your state's exemption laws, your specific creditors, they all matter. That is exactly why you should consult a licensed bankruptcy attorney and a nonprofit credit counselor before making any decisions. As of today, my FICO score is 601. That's not great, but it's climbing. After a Chapter 7 discharge, there is a path back. Secured credit cards, on-time payments, low utilization, the same fundamentals that build credit in the first place. Our bankruptcy attorney told us that many of his former clients are back in the 680 to 720 range within 3 years of their discharge if they're disciplined. I'm working as head of kitchen operations for a hotel restaurant group now. I make $62,000 a year plus benefits. I have health insurance for the first time in 4 years. Dana and I are still in our house. We reaffirmed our mortgage as part of the bankruptcy, meaning we agreed to keep paying it and keep the property. We are current on our mortgage. Zoe just turned 11 and has no idea how close we came to losing everything, and I'd like to keep it that way for a few more years. My parents, that's the one that still keeps me up sometimes. We have started paying them back informally, $300 a month, and they've been more gracious about it than I deserve. That relationship took work to repair. Honesty was the only thing that fixed it. I don't know where you are in your own story right now. Maybe you're a restaurant owner staring at a spreadsheet at 2 a.m. Maybe you're a contractor whose business loan went sideways. Maybe you're a freelancer who got behind on quarterly taxes and now you have an IRS notice you're afraid to open. Maybe you're just someone who borrowed too much and doesn't know what the options are. Here is what I want you to take from this. The number is just a number. It feels like your whole life, but it is a number, and numbers have solutions. The worst thing you can do is keep the drawer closed. Open the envelopes. Call a nonprofit credit counselor. Talk to a bankruptcy attorney if the situation warrants it. Tell the person who loves you what's actually happening. The shame is the thing that will actually destroy you. The debt is just math. You can get through this. I am proof that you can get through this. Get the free debt checklist in the description. It walks you through how to organize your debts, what questions to ask a credit counselor, and what to bring to a bankruptcy attorney consultation. Link below. And if this story helped you, subscribe. There are more stories here from people who found their way through.